what I mean?
Yeah. So, okay, so you're in New Zealand. You're an engineer by trade. You're doing welding. You're doing all kinds of crazy work.
Yeah.
And on the side, you're
Wrestling.
doing wrestling gigs. Are you making any money doing wrestling back then?
Back then, if I told you...
While you were in New Zealand, were you making money?
Yeah, when I tell you, I was making £3, £2 or £3 a match. And if you know what a pound is those days, that's a pound was equal to $2.
Wow.
And I make
$2 a match.
Yeah, and a wage at that time would be a good wage would be about £15 a week. Wage. That's for not a professional, but that's for an average worker was £10 to £15 a week.
Wow.
By accident, you kind of like fell into this. This was never like a dream for you.
No, the next door neighbor and I went in and that, hung out and that, you know.
So when did you develop that whole moniker, the whole whoa with the?
No, that came later. That came many moons later. Okay. We left home in 1970.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
so why did you? Yeah, go back.
Let's go back. We mainly had Europeans wrestlers.
Yeah.
from Europe and England. When they come over, we actually ran 3 times a week or twice a week, 3 times a week, and a guy would come over for say 2 months, 3 months, and that's when we get most of our work. And in '68, I started going to Australia. The American promoter from Atlanta, a well-known promoter who got Ted Turner to put the wrestling up on the satellite on TBS. Well, he was over in New Zealand, and that was WCW. He was over in Australia, and he come over there in '65 and opened up Australia. That's when the Vietnam War was on, and all the troops were coming down to Australia for R&R, rest and recreation. And he was there. He opened up in Australia. He bought out the roller derby, and then brought a whole American crew in and started running it. I'd go over there and work against the Americans, and that maybe 3 times a year. Go over there for a month or 3 weeks. And work against the Americans.
Now, when Ted Turner was basically syndicating wrestling shows across the world in lots of different countries.
Yeah, but
it started with the U.S., right?
Yeah, but he didn't start. The satellite didn't go up to '76, I think. You know It was called WTBS.
It was called WTBS.
TBS, yeah. WTBS, and then he dropped the W off it, and just TBS.
And what was the wrestling program called?
It was World Championship Wrestling.
That's what Ted Turner's was called?
Yeah, Ted Turner. Well, that was Jim Barnett's company.
Okay.
And Jim Barnett, the Australian promoter, actually owned part of Florida Championship Wrestling. He owned a part of a lot of companies around the States, but he was in Atlanta. He had WCW.
Okay.
And then later on in life, you know, when
Vince came
all
along.
the small territories went out, and Vince was the only one, and that's when Ted Turner bought NWA, and it changed from NWA to WCW.
Oh, okay.
The name and that's when they had the Monday Night Wars in the 90s. But anyway, we're going back to the 60s.
Right.
We jumped well ahead here. Fuck. Anyhow, so I met a lot of Americans and that, and André come over to our country too in '69.
André the Giant?
Yeah, so Butch and me worked against Butch, my partner, and myself. We partnered up in '66. You know, locally and that, but we never started touring overseas till, you know, to the Middle East, not the Middle East, to the East, Singapore and up in Bangkok and that, till '68. André come over to New Zealand in '69, and Butch and me worked with him for a whole month around the country.
Really?
Yeah. So
holy shit. What was that like?
André was only 350 then. 350, 360, and with a big afro. He looked skinny, you know what
Really?
I mean? Well, 7'2" with a big afro, and only 350. You know what I mean?
That's incredible. You spent a whole month with him.
So that's how when I first met Andre and that. And of course, too, I met the big names like Killer Kowalski. He was one of the biggest names in the heels in the world at the time. Who was main eventer at Madison Square Gardens in the 60s and in the 70s. He was the he was the main bad guy, and he's the guy that actually got Australia going for Jim Barnett. You know, our business is cowboys and Indians.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that they brought in, and he actually popped Australia and got it up going, you know, for Jim Barnett.
Wow.
And so when I come over in 72, Butch and me came over to North America for the first time.
And why did you guys come for the first time? What was the reason?
Well, you know, Hollywood was, if you want to be a star in movies and television and that, you go to Hollywood. If you want all the wrestling magazines, you know, we didn't get a wrestling show till 76 in New Zealand on television. And that, so we got wrestling magazines in the 60s and that, and you know, they all come out of the States. Everything came from the States. The States was where it was, you know, for wrestling.
Yeah.
So it was bigger than England and Europe and all that sort of stuff.
So you guys you know, we're doing it. If we want to make it big time, we got to go to California.
No, we didn't come to California. That was for Hollywood and actors. We just got two promoters that the New Zealand promoter knew very well. That they were the Vachon brothers. Maurice Vachon, Mad Dog Vachon, he's dead now. His brother, they just put another movie out about them this weekend. But they were two Frenchmen, were well known throughout the States, and they owned a territory in Montreal called Grand Prix. So they brought us over there. This territory was running 3 towns a night. This promotion was running. They had a crew. This was a big promotion, running 3 towns a night in the province of Ontario and Quebec, and northern part of Vermont, and upstate New York. They'd come into that, and it was out of Montreal.
Wow.
And so they brought us over there, and of course the main heel was Walter Kowalski, and the main babyface, good guy, was the Giant. So we knew
André?
André had just come to North America the first time 6 months before we did.
Oh shit! And where was he living, in France?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was working Europe and England,
right. And
he came in a year, 6 months, 8 months before us. So when we come in, he was over like hell. It was drawing this territory was on fire.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So when we came in, we knew the two main guys, and after about a month, we were one of the main events in the third town. You know, one of the towns, and you know what I mean. We were used right.
That HBO documentary on André was insane.
Yeah,
the stuff that he had to go through, like everyday life, flying in airplanes, how much of torture that was for him.
Oh yeah, going to the pooper. I got to tell you about that later. Going to the pooper, he could never get on those.
You can't.
Anyhow, we're going back. So here I am in this territory, and at the time too, Pierre Trudeau was the Prime Minister. His son is the Prime Minister now, and he's not so liked
Prime Minister
of Canada.
Canada.
Yeah, and he was going out with Mick Jagger's his wife, Bianca. He was effing around with Mick Jagger's wife. It was, you know, Mick had broken up with her, but that was a big thing at the time.
So it was his ex-wife?
Yeah. And at the time, too, when we came into Parti Québécois was trying to break away from Canada and be its own country. It's crazy, you know, the politics then.
Yeah.
Quebec, you know, it was wild at the time.